I want to thank the TEDx committee for inviting me, not only because I'm flattered, which I am, but it also reminded me of an important story about Gandhi. A woman had a son who was obsessed and addicted to sugar, so she took him to the great leader Gandhi to cure his addiction. She brought the son to Gandhi. Gandhi spoke to him for a little bit and sent him away and told the mother, bring him back in 2 weeks. 2 weeks later, the mother brought the son back. The son met with Gandhi. They talked for a little while, not too much longer. He was cured, and they were about to leave, and the woman asked Gandhi, why did you wait 2 weeks? What happened over that 2 weeks? And he said, well, 2 weeks ago, I was obsessed and addicted to sugar, so I needed 2 weeks to cut back before I could talk to your son about that. When the TEDx committee asked me to talk about my baseline, it was a good reminder that during the pandemic, during this most challenging year we've just had, I've been knocked off my baseline. That I've been aware of my baseline. I might not have referred to it that way, but I've done work around my baseline. And over the past year, it's one more time in my life where I've been faced with challenges. I have some tools to meet them, but I realize sometimes too late that I've been knocked off my baseline. I need to reboot. I need to return to that. And I thank the TEDx committee because here I am, and it's given me a few weeks to do some reflection the way Gandhi did. Hate to compare myself to Gandhi, and I'm not doing that. So let me take you back to the first discovery of my baseline. I was about 12 years old, maybe a little bit younger, doing fine in school, well in school even, kind of active in sports, doing pretty well there, and really well behaved. On the other hand, I had what might be described as a really bad temper, and that might be a kind way to describe it. I would kind of lose it and fly off the handle, and it was really not okay. So my mom sat me down and she said, Erin, I'm going to give you 2 choices. Okay, Mom, I have no idea where this is going. Choice 1, we can buy some boxing equipment for the basement, a big bag, a small bag, and some gloves. And when you're frustrated, when you're angry, when you get into these moods, you can go down in the basement and work that out. I said, okay, well, that seems like a pretty good option. That's sounding pretty good. What's option 2? Option 2 is you go to a psychiatrist. I said, okay. Well, I was about 12, wasn't sure exactly what that meant. That was also a little bit of a different era. So that didn't sound like a very good option. I chose option 1. That was my first introduction to what my baseline was. That my baseline way of managing my emotions, of managing stress, maybe not that healthy, and maybe something that I need to be aware of and may cause me problems. Now, at that time, I wouldn't have thought of it in those terms, but on reflection, that was the first awakening to my baseline, and it was a real gift from my mother to do that. It wasn't until another 40 years where I did take her up on part 2 and go to a therapist. And that was only several years ago. This is a time for a little bit of a disclaimer. My therapist and I, as we tried to identify what might some of these issues be that I'll refer to later as challenges or issues, what was going on back when I was around 12 years old. And we struggled to put labels on it, struggled to diagnose it, and didn't feel like that was necessarily that important for me. This is just my story. It could be more possible or more helpful for someone else to put labels on it and get that diagnosis. So we called it the energies. I just have these energies. That's what I was feeling, and sometimes I manage them well, and sometimes I don't. So if I refer to the energies, that's what we're talking about. So that strategy that my mom employed in middle school served me fairly well during high school and college, and we kind of stuck with that same mode. I would work hard, have lots of physical activity. I was parts of sports teams. That gave me a sense of purpose. The physical activity gave me a physical release. And that worked pretty well. That was when things were healthy. Sometimes I just have too much energy, too much going on. It might be 11 or 12 o'clock at night in the middle of the week. My parents are sitting there watching the news, and I come running down the stairs, jump down the stairs. I'm in a full karate gi, or I'm in army fatigues, and I just take off and I run, and I'm in the woods running at 11 or 12 o'clock at night. It's arguable whether that's healthy or not. Other times, I would choose less healthy alternatives like alcohol to manage the energies and to manage my mental health issues that I was having. That weren't, and really don't have a diagnosis or a label on them. But all in all, I managed pretty well. Came to Middlebury College and kind of managed the energies with that formula that we talked about. Fast forward to the early 1990s, I'm back at Middlebury as a coach. I graduated from Middlebury in '86. I've got a master's degree. I'm married to my college sweetheart, who's great. I've got a good job, taking up mountain biking and skiing and running and lifting, some of these same physical activities. But maybe at this point, they're not enough anymore. There's other things going on. Family issues that maybe were under the surface before start manifesting themselves, and we start discovering things in our family like alcoholism, addiction, suicide, and other serious mental health challenges like bipolar disorder or depression. Again, I don't have the diagnosis for myself, and at that time, I wasn't sure whether those are exactly the things I was facing or not, but I knew they were part of my family. They felt like they were part of me, and I knew that the tools that I had used before were not enough to address these, not enough to address the energies that I had felt, or what my therapist and I named these broader issues, the troubles. The energies and the troubles, and I knew that the modalities that I had at that point weren't enough to manage these. So, much like Frank, I chose to address these, and after some research, I landed on meditation, Qigong. Those are some Qigong exercises we were doing before, some shaking and tapping, Tai Chi, and some body healing that I did as well. Those were all activities that would move me towards a more positive baseline. I also gave up alcohol, sweets, caffeine, and I became a vegetarian. I felt like there might be some things that would move me away from a negative baseline, and then I can add some activities that would move me toward a positive baseline. And those worked really well for a long time. Life was pretty good. There was the challenges, like everybody has, but I managed them pretty well. I managed the energies pretty well. I felt like there's a way I've heard described some mental health issues of a nice calm duck on the surface, and underneath, the feet are really paddling. When I was younger and through the early 90s, I was that duck, and there was lots of paddling. My brain was very noisy all the time. I felt like in the 10 or 15 years after that things had quieted down, that maybe that duck on the surface also was kind of chilling underneath and just paddling along pretty easily. Not without challenges, but it felt pretty good. So things are going well. You've got a good job. You've got a great life. You live in this great town of Middlebury. So let's change careers and give that up, right? Seems like a great idea. So in many ways, it was a really good idea. The idea was to learn, change, grow, meet some new challenges. And that was all right and good. And it served me pretty well to do that. I think it was a good choice in retrospect. But I didn't do the self-reflection to say, are the modalities that I have enough for what's going to be new challenges? I didn't do the self-awareness and the self-reflection with the new challenges. Maybe I didn't understand what those new challenges will be. And I realized a couple of things when I took this new job, and it took me about 5 years, which is too long to be awakened, or what I might call reawakened, to some of the challenges that I have. Some of the new challenges that I unearthed in this process had led me by 2011, so about 5 years into my new job, to be in what might be described as a deep depression, whether that's a clinical depression or just how I was feeling, or what Adam Grant described a couple weeks ago in an article as languishing. But I was not in a good place within the first 5 years. I realized that what I had done up until 2006 was necessary at the time, was helpful at the time, but maybe not sufficient for these new challenges. I realized also that with that depression, there were probably three main things leading to that I had not really uncovered and discovered in my previous self-awareness processes. And that is a sense of perfectionism, a sense of invulnerability, and low empathy. The perfectionism and the invulnerability came from that personal development, the focus on my personal development, because I was so fearful of what failure might mean, so fearful of the energies or the troubles taking over, that I put on a suit of armor. I was going to be perfect. I was going to be invulnerable. And if you think those are just words, I literally would say to myself, I will be and need to be perfect, and I can do this, and I will not succumb to the energies or the troubles. And I didn't use those words at the time. Those we decided on a couple of years ago. But that was my approach. And there were some things that were okay about it. But with new stresses and new challenges, it was not enough. It was necessary, but it was not sufficient. So it took me about 5 years to realize that. I kind of did some, again, reflection and self-awareness, realized these things. I had a friend give me an assessment on my personality. He's the one who identified that I had low empathy, not because I didn't care about people, but I was so focused on holding things in and being invulnerable that it was hard to connect with people, see things from their perspective, trust people, and let go, and that I needed to do that as this next step. So I refocused on my mindfulness efforts, but I made it then an inside-out approach. Yes, I need to work on myself inside, but it's only useful if it then extends to others and you develop a sense of empathy, a sense of compassion, and a sense of connection with other people. So that's what I tried to do. I also codified this philosophy in writing for myself so I could come back to it. I picked 5 points to focus on. One was work hard. That has served me well. I need to work hard and stay busy, and that had served me well, and I feel good doing it. I get in a flow state, so I continued to work hard, but I added work smart, because if you work hard without smart, your relationships can suffer. And I also have recently added with joy. Work hard and smart and find joy in the work. Number 2, there are no ordinary moments. Be grateful for the small, everyday moments. They're there. If you're with another person, be empathetic, be compassionate, connect with them, and find joy in that connection in those otherwise ordinary moments. 3, constant and never-ending improvement. If you think that sounds too much like perfectionism, you're right. This is something that I adapted when I was younger. It evolved over time to be learn and grow by making mistakes, taking risks, and being okay with failure. So I've kept it as constant and never-ending improvement, but within the context of being comfortable failing, learning, and growing. Number 4 is relationships matter. All of that personal development in the world doesn't matter if you can't share it with joy, can't share it with love with other people. So relationships matter, and I'm going to focus on relationships. And then last, love is a verb. It's not just a nice word. It doesn't just happen. It is a verb. You love. You actively love. And that's going to be sort of a key to everything for me. So I had these struggles, gone through this time. That's a pretty good formula. I've landed, I think, on a better place. I've got the internal processes. They move out to other people. I've even codified it. So I've got all this figured out. End of story. Life is happily ever after, right? Not quite yet. About a year ago, pandemic hit the world, and I'm not alone in those struggles. Other people have mentioned it. The last year has been tough. Another one of these transitions. Some self-awareness, some early part of the pandemic where I say, I've got this, I've been through this before, apply these principles, and you're going to be okay. But it's been a long year, and those have eroded a little bit. Again, this is a good time to thank the TEDx committee for making me re-look at these and have a reawakening again to my baseline and what I need to do to live the life that I want to live. And I've done that in the last couple of weeks, and it was a quicker process having gone through the last process I went through in 2011. So it's going to be hard. A few months ago, started seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, thinking it's maybe the end of the pandemic is coming. And it turns out that light is an oncoming train because a month ago, my dad dies. It's another reminder that life's challenges are going to keep coming. But that doesn't mean you have to give up. It doesn't mean that we don't have any tools, but we don't have to be perfect. We don't have to have all the answers. We rely on others for help. We ask for help, and it's okay to admit that we don't have the answer and we can be vulnerable. So I've gone back to my baseline. I will work hard, but I'll do it smart and I'll do it with joy. I will savor the ordinary moments of everyday life and be grateful for them. I will constantly try to improve, but it'll be through taking risks, failing, making mistakes, being vulnerable and being okay with that. I will nurture close relationships, and I will love actively. That is my baseline, as I have tried to define it, not as it tried to define me. Thank you very much.